What if banks and money disappeared tomorrow? Imagine opening your eyes at dawn and discovering that the very system that has guided the rhythm of human life for centuries has dissolved overnight. The glowing screen of your phone shows no balance in your account. The plastic card in your pocket has become nothing but meaningless plastic, and the bills folded neatly in your wallet are nothing more than colored scraps of paper. Within seconds, the weight of this realization sinks in. The security net of savings, the obligations of debt, the flow of wages and payments, everything that once formed the invisible web of global society has vanished. Panic spreads like wildfire as news breaks across every city. Banks stand silent with locked doors and abandoned lobbies. Markets fail to open, and stock exchanges display only blank screens. People flood the streets holding useless notes and frozen cards, shouting in disbelief. A system that once felt unshakable collapses instantly when the trust that sustains it evaporates. In homes and workplaces, confusion quickly turns into desperation. Without banks and money, the rules of exchange unravel, leaving only raw survival instincts. Families rush to supermarkets where shelves still overflow with food, but without a way to measure value or pay for goods, the aisles descend into chaos. In one corner of the world, a farmer offers sacks of potatoes in exchange for candles, while in another city, someone attempts to barter a car for a supply of water. Without the guiding principle of currency, fairness disappears. Every trade becomes a fragile agreement balanced on fear and suspicion. Governments move frantically to address the crisis, summoning emergency councils and broadcasting reassurances that ring hollow in the ears of frightened citizens. Leaders confront impossible questions. How do you collect taxes without money? How do you pay soldiers, doctors, and teachers? How do you keep hospitals supplied, electricity flowing, and schools functioning when the nervous system of finance has been severed? In some countries, militaries are deployed to guard resources and enforce rationing. Others attempt to create digital credits distributed by central servers. But with trust shattered, such systems inspire resistance rather than obedience. In places where governments collapse under the strain, local communities begin to invent their own forms of exchange. Some issue handwritten vouchers. Others record agreements in ledgers shared by neighbors. A patchwork of microeconomies emerges, each struggling to rebuild order in the absence of banks and money. For ordinary people, the impact is devastating. Parents realize that the savings they had carefully built for their children's futures are now nothing more than worthless pieces of paper. Workers who once dreamed of retirement watch in disbelief as their pensions evaporate. At the same time, those who carried heavy debts suddenly find themselves free, yet trapped in a world where freedom means little when shelves are empty and power is scarce. The psychological weight is immense. For generations, money has been more than a tool of exchange. It has been a measure of status, of progress, of security, of identity. With its disappearance, humanity confronts a crisis not only of economy, but of meaning itself. Some rejoice in this sudden equality, pointing out that billionaires and beggars alike now stand empty-handed before the dawn of a new age. Yet others cling desperately to the old order, hoarding bills as relics, hoping against reason that the system will return. Trade shifts to the physical once more. Gold and silver, long dismissed as archaic, gain renewed significance as societies seek something tangible to anchor trust. In rural villages, livestock and crops become the coin of survival. In crowded cities, tools, electronics, and fuel rise in value as new forms of currency. The black market thrives in the shadows. Gangs hoard resources, creating their own rules of exchange enforced with violence. Trust becomes a weapon, scarcity a currency of power. Communication networks fill with rumors. Whispers of hidden stashes, secret systems, or foreign solutions swirl unchecked, spreading paranoia. Some groups turn to technology, attempting to design decentralized records of barter and exchange, while others embrace spiritual interpretations, seeing the collapse of banks and money as a divine reset, a chance to abandon greed and rediscover simplicity. Communities begin to reorganize the concept of value itself. Professions once seen as prestigious but abstract lose significance. A lawyer or an investor finds their skills suddenly irrelevant, while a farmer with seeds or a doctor with medicine becomes invaluable. Entire cities reinvent themselves as networks of mutual aid where neighbors trade labor and resources in order to endure. Yet darker stories unfold elsewhere. Riots break out over dwindling supplies. Nations fracture into warring factions. Fragile states collapse entirely. Global trade grinds to a halt as ships lie idle in harbors and planes remain grounded. Goods rot in warehouses because there is no universal medium to move them. The interconnected dream of globalization shatters, and the planet fragments into isolated pockets of survival. Still, humanity adapts as it always has. In some places, authoritarian leaders seize power, offering stability in exchange for obedience, creating rigid systems of control over resources. In other places, communities experiment with radical new structures. Some attempt to live without currency entirely, adopting resource-sharing systems that echo ancient tribes. Others create entirely new forms of currency based on energy, time, or reputation. Historians of the future would see this moment as a turning point. They would note how quickly the illusion of stability fell apart and how humanity was forced to confront the fragility of its foundations. They might record stories of cooperation and rebirth, of villages where strangers became family, of cities where people discovered new ways to thrive. Or they might chronicle decline, where fear and greed consumed opportunity and humanity tore itself apart. The disappearance of banks and money would reveal more than the weakness of finance. It would reveal the truth that money has always been a shared belief, a collective agreement, a fragile story written in the minds of billions. When that story ends, what remains is the raw essence of humanity, our ability to trust, to trade, to cooperate, and to imagine new systems of order. In the quiet after the storm, one final question lingers. If banks and money disappeared tomorrow, would we build a fairer, more resilient system from the ruins? Or would we prove that we were forever prisoners of the illusions we ourselves created? The morning after the disappearance of banks and money, humanity would awaken to a mirror held against itself. In that reflection, people would see that the power of currency never lived in the paper, the coin, or the digital code. It lived in the collective trust that these objects and numbers meant something. Without that trust, the foundation of civilization dissolves. Yet within that collapse lies a strange opportunity. Freed from debts and balances, people could begin to ask what truly holds value. Perhaps it is food, or medicine, or the skills of those who can heal and build. Perhaps it is time itself, the hours spent with family, the moments dedicated to community, the creativity poured into art and song. The vanishing of banks and money would force humanity to decide whether it wants to rebuild the same fragile system that once bound it, or whether it dares to create something new. As the dust of confusion settles and the first fragile forms of new order emerge, the ultimate question remains. If the symbols of wealth and security vanished in a single night, would humanity discover that its true strength lies not in money, but in each other?